Every year, a crime is committed on a global scale. It's a heist so vast, so audacious, that its cost dwarfs the GDP of most nations. It is a theft of human potential, a silent robbery of creativity, passion and ingenuity happening right now in broad daylight inside the walls of your own organization. The price tag for this crime is $8.9 trillion. According to Gallup, that is the annual cost of lost productivity due to employee disengagement. This is not a soft number. It is a hard, cold calculation of the economic value that is being vaporized every single day because the vast majority of our workforce is showing up to work without really showing up at all. This is the crisis of the corporate zombie, the employee who has stopped thinking, stopped caring, and is doing the absolute minimum required to survive. They are the living embodiment of wasted human capital, and they're the default product of the modern workplace. I know this because for 30 years I have been a change agent in the trenches of corporate America. And everywhere I go, I see the same thing. Brilliant, capable people who have been systematically drained of their energy, their creativity, and their will to contribute. And I know this because it happened to me. A few years ago, I was hired as a senior agile coach at a large consulting firm. I was hired for my expertise in organizational transformation. And for the first 3 months of one engagement, I spent 50% of my time on a single soul-crushing task, manually pulling data out of an application and stuffing it into spreadsheets so they could produce reports. I hated every minute of it. Not because the work was beneath me, because it was a criminal waste of my time and the company's money. A well-written script could have done it in minutes. So I did what any reasonable, engaged employee should do. I raised the issue with my leadership, and I proposed a solution. I said, let me automate this, so I can do the work you're actually paying me for. The response? Swift and unambiguous. I was fired by the client for questioning their process. But the story is more complicated than that. It was not a bad manager who fired me. It was a system. A system with 3 interlocking failure modes that made my firing inevitable. Failure mode number 1, the sales cycle. My firm would recommend senior coaches like me during the sales process, but we would often be removed during the contract negotiations because the firm lacked the vocabulary to defend our value. They didn't understand what we did. Failure mode number 2, the compensation structure. The account team was not being negligent. They were actually being perfectly rational. Their bonuses were tied to billable hours, butts and seats, and revenue, not client outcomes. Failure mode number 3, the contract itself. The firm was attempting to sell agile engagements without really understanding agile. And so the contracts had waterfall deliverables, fixed scope, fixed timeline, and fixed costs. So when I proposed a solution that would have delivered more value to the client in less time, I was not just questioning a process. I was threatening a business model. I was a zealot in a system that was perfectly designed to produce billable hours, not transformation, and the system did what it was designed to do. It rejected me. If my story is about a zombie created by a system that values compliance over initiative, this next one is about zombies created by a system that values short-term savings over long-term stewardship. I recently worked with a company struggling to migrate from a monolithic mainframe application to a microservice-based application on the cloud. Much of the development work was being done by highly skilled offshore teams. But there was a problem. Most of the people who knew the mainframe application, the ones with the encyclopedic knowledge of what it actually did, were either retired or dead. The company was suffering from a knowledge extinction event. This created a specification vacuum. The business would ask the offshore team to build a feature and give them some specifications, and the teams would deliver exactly what was asked for. Then they would be told, no, that's not what we needed. Their successful deliveries were labeled as bugs. The finger pointing was relentless. And I can tell you, morale on the teams plummeted. Several of the teams were so demoralized by this continuous unfair criticism that they were ready to quit en masse. The delivery practices of this organization were so stressful that they were actually putting people in the hospital or sending them into retirement. These were not disengaged employees. These were passionate, committed professionals who were being systematically broken by a system that had failed them. These experiences, and hundreds of others like them, led me to develop a framework for understanding what happens to people at work. I call it the Z scale. At the bottom, you have the zombie. Their mindset is, my effort doesn't matter, and that's just how it is here. They have surrendered to their fate. One step up, you have the zoner, whose mindset is, I just want to do my job. Don't bother me with all the details. Just leave me alone. They don't want to have to think. They are happy following orders. They're the good corporate soldiers in most organizations. Next step up, you have the Zephyr. The Zephyr's mindset is, I have a better idea. Their spirits are starting to awake. They are showing a willingness to take risks and make improvements. And at the very top, you have the Zealot. Their mindset is, how can we make this better? They accept responsibility for outcomes and take ownership of their work. They detest inefficiency when they see it, and they are the 1% of your staff who deliver 90% of the innovation. For my whole career, the dominant management philosophy has been to treat everyone like a zombie. We build systems of command and control, of surveillance, of micromanagement, and in doing so, we create the very disengagement we are trying to solve. But there's a critical nuance to this. The Z-scale does not measure a fixed property of a person. It measures the relationship between a person and their system as seen through a particular frame of reference. I call this the observer effect. A zealot in the wrong system looks exactly like a zombie. The offshore teams in my story, they were zealots, but through the leadership's frame of reference, they look like underperformers. Me at the consulting firm, I was a zealot, but through the firm's frame of reference, I look like a troublemaker. This is the most dangerous blind spot in modern leadership. We think we are assessing our people, but we are actually just revealing the limits of our own perspective. And these types of experiences led me to ask a question that has haunted me my entire career. A question that I believe exposes the fundamental dishonesty at the heart of the management consulting industry. The question is, if $8.9 trillion of productivity is being lost every year, why would professional consultants be afraid to guarantee a doubling of client productivity? Think about it. If the opportunity is that vast and the experts are that expert, why won't they put their money where their mouth is? Why won't they sign a contract that says, if we don't double your productivity, you don't pay us? I'll tell you why. Because they know their frameworks alone cannot fix the problem. They know that no matter how elegant their PowerPoint slides are, they are ultimately powerless against a broken system. They know that a bad system will beat a good person and a good consultant every time. The Z-scale was born from the honest answer to that question. It was born from the realization that you cannot solve the engagement crisis by layering a new framework on top of a broken system. You have to fix the system itself. And to do that, you need a tool that makes the system visible. But before we get to the tools, let me discuss one other aspect that is perhaps the most dangerous and counterintuitive insight from my 30 years in the trenches. And that is, the people who are causing the most damage to your organization are often your best people. I'm talking about the heroes, the ones who refuse to give up, the ones who absorb the chaos, work extraordinary hours, and hold the team together through sheer force of will and personal sacrifice. I know this pattern not just as a coach, but as a husband. When my wife and I were dating, she would often call me late at night, sobbing uncontrollably. She was overwhelmed, convinced she could not possibly get everything done. And I would gently try to tell her what I could see clearly from the outside. She was not struggling because she was inadequate. She was struggling because she was doing the work of 3 or 4 people. She was a hero in a zombie organization, and the system was consuming her. The hero is not a sustainable solution. They are a symptom of a broken system. They will burn out. They will grow resentful. And eventually they will leave and take an amazing amount of institutional knowledge with them. And here's the insidious part. The hero's conscientiousness becomes the very mechanism by which the zealots, or the zombies in action, is subsidized. The hero picks up the slack. The zombie learns that the slack will always be picked up. And the organization, seeing that the work is somehow getting done, never confronts the underlying dysfunction. Your heroes are not just saving the day. They are masking the systemic failures that are creating your zombies in the first place. So, given those situations, what do we do? How do we break this cycle? How do we stop punishing our heroes and subsidizing our zombies? It starts with asking a different set of questions. For my whole career, we've been asking, how do we engage our employees? I believe this is the wrong question. It assumes the employee is the problem. I would prefer to ask, how are our systems disengaging our employees? This question shifts the focus from the individual to the system. It forces us to look in the mirror and question our leadership practices, our processes, and our culture. And it's not enough to have a diagnostic. You need a complete operating system. A set of tools that allows you to see the system, diagnose the constraints, and redesign the work itself. Over 30 years, I've built and tested a set of 12 such tools. I call them the tools of the Zealot Factory. I don't have time to go over all 12, but I want to show you how 3 of the most powerful ones work in practice. First, the Zealot Transformation Index, or ZTI. This is a 10-question survey that measures the health of your human system. We ask questions like, how often do you feel that your work is a waste of time, on a scale of 1 to 5? A score below 3 is a fire alarm. It tells you that your system is actively destroying engagement. The ZTI gives you a baseline, a way to measure if your interventions are actually working. Second, the ego filter. This is a mental model for correcting the observer effect. Before you assess anyone's engagement, you have to ask yourself 3 questions. 1, is this person's behavior genuinely disruptive, or is it challenging a broken process? 2, is this person disengaged, or are they a zealot and my frame of reference cannot yet recognize? And 3, is my assessment based on their impact of the system or my personal comfort? The ego filter forces you to see the system before you judge the person. And third, the 5 focusing steps from the theory of constraints. This is a systematic process for eliminating bottlenecks. Let's take a simple example. Say your constraint is a single legal reviewer who has to approve every contract. Step 1 of the theory of constraints says identify the constraint. We've done that. It's the lawyer. Step 2 says exploit the constraint. Make sure he or she is doing only legal review, nothing else. No administrative tasks, no sitting in meetings where she's not essential, only legal reviews. Step 3, subordinate everything else to the constraint. No one sends her a document until it is 100% ready to review and she has capacity to work on it. The rest of the organization serves the constraint. Step 4, elevate the constraint. If the bottleneck persists, then we can consider hiring a second lawyer or giving her better tools to allow her to increase her capacity. But only after you have fully exploited the capacity of the first lawyer. And step 5, repeat the process. We may have, if we've eliminated her as a process, he or she, or he, as the bottleneck, we probably created another one. So we might need to find the new bottleneck and start the process again. This is how you build a culture of continuous improvement. These are not just ideas, they are a complete integrated operating system for raising the dead. They are the tools that allow you to stop talking about the $8.9 trillion problem and start solving it. The crisis of engagement in the modern workplace is not just a business problem, it is a human crisis. And the act of creating zombies is not just a management failure, it's a moral failure. To knowingly perpetuate a system that crushes the human spirit is to be complicit in the $8.9 trillion heist. But the reverse is also true. To intentionally and consistently dismantle the zombie-making machine is one of the most powerful moral acts a leader can perform. This is what it means to raise the dead. It's not a metaphor. It is the literal, observable process of a human spirit coming back to life. That is a legacy worth building. That is a purpose worth pursuing. Thank you.